By the time you're watching this video, relax. There's probably not a US airstrike on your roof. But hey, maybe just double-check the ceiling. It feels like the world is standing in the middle of a storm that hasn't fully broken yet. Turn on the news, and you'll hear about wars, military buildups, nuclear threats, and world leaders warning about dangerous times. Right now, the United States and Israel have launched direct military strikes on Iran, hitting nuclear and military targets and triggering deadly retaliation across the region. Missiles, drones, and airstrikes are everywhere. With nuclear facilities involved and powerful nations watching closely, one wrong move could turn a regional war into something far more catastrophic. In this video, we'll ask the question on everyone's mind: could World War III actually start in the coming months? The biggest shock to the global order came in February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. When Russian President Vladimir Putin launched what he called a special military operation, many experts thought the war would last weeks. Instead, it has dragged on for years and turned into the largest war in Europe since World War II. Cities have been destroyed, tens of thousands of soldiers have died, and millions of Ukrainians have been displaced. The conflict quickly became more than just a war between two countries. NATO and Western nations poured tens of billions of dollars into Ukraine through weapons, intelligence, and financial support. The United States alone has committed enormous military aid packages, supplying advanced artillery, air defense systems, tanks, and long-range missiles. Russia, on the other hand, framed the war as a direct struggle against Western influence and expansion. Putin has repeatedly warned that if NATO becomes directly involved, it could lead to consequences the world has never seen before. That's not just political talk. Russia possesses the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, and every time nuclear weapons get mentioned in the context of a war, people understandably start to worry. So now we will begin on the whiteboard explaining. Hope you enjoy it. We begin. While the Ukraine war continues grinding on with brutal trench fighting and drone warfare, another massive crisis exploded in the Middle East. The October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel in 2023 shocked the world and triggered one of the most intense conflicts the region has seen in years. Israel responded with a massive military campaign in Gaza aimed at destroying Hamas. The fighting has been devastating and has triggered global outrage, protests, and heated political debates across dozens of countries. But the real concern among global leaders isn't just the war in Gaza itself, it's the risk that the conflict could spread across the Middle East. Iran, Israel's main regional rival, supports multiple armed groups throughout the region, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthi movement in Yemen. Since the war began, rockets, missiles, and drones have been launched by various groups aligned with Iran toward Israel and Western targets. Then there is the growing tension between the United States and China, which many analysts believe could become the defining rivalry of the 21st century. At the center of that tension is Taiwan, a small island that plays an enormous role in global technology. Taiwan produces a huge percentage of the world's advanced semiconductor chips, which power everything from smartphones to artificial intelligence systems to modern weapons. China's leader Xi Jinping has made it clear that he considers Taiwan part of China, and has repeatedly said that reunification is inevitable. Taiwan, however, operates as a self-governing democracy and has strong informal support from the United States. American warships regularly pass through the Taiwan Strait, while China frequently conducts large military exercises around the island and sends fighter jets near Taiwanese airspace. The situation has become a dangerous standoff. If China ever attempted to take Taiwan by force, the United States might step in to defend the island. A war between the United States and China would immediately become the largest and most dangerous military conflict in modern history. Amid all of this global tension, political leadership plays a massive role in determining whether situations calm down or spiral out of control. One of the most talked about figures in this conversation is Donald Trump. Trump has repeatedly warned in interviews and campaign rallies that the world today is closer to a global conflict than it has been in decades. In several public appearances, he has argued that the wars currently happening around the world would not have started if he had remained president. Trump has specifically claimed that Russia would never have invaded Ukraine during his presidency, saying that his relationship with Vladimir Putin and his negotiation style would have prevented the conflict. In interviews, he has said that he could end the war in Ukraine very quickly by bringing both Russia and Ukraine to the negotiating table and forcing a deal, even stating that he could solve the conflict within 24 hours. Critics argue that such a deal could pressure Ukraine into giving up territory, while supporters believe it could stop a devastating war that has already cost hundreds of thousands of lives. When it comes to the Middle East, Trump has also claimed that the region was more stable during his presidency. He often points to the Abraham Accords, the normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab countries, as evidence that diplomatic deals can reduce tensions in the region. In recent speeches, he has blamed current leadership for allowing the situation in the Middle East to spiral out of control, and has warned that if the conflict between Israel and Iran expands, it could drag multiple countries into a much larger war. Europe, meanwhile, has been quietly undergoing one of the biggest military transformations in decades. For many years after the Cold War ended, European countries reduced defense spending because they believed large-scale war on the continent was no longer a serious possibility. Russia's invasion of Ukraine shattered that belief almost overnight. Germany announced a massive military modernization plan worth hundreds of billions of euros. Poland has begun building one of the largest land armies in Europe and is purchasing huge amounts of tanks, artillery, and fighter jets. Finland and Sweden, historically neutral countries, decided to move toward NATO membership because of fears about Russian aggression. One of the most explosive developments pushing the world closer to the edge right now is the sudden war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. In early 2206, tensions that had been building for years finally snapped. Iran had already been under severe economic pressure, with sanctions crippling its economy and inflation crushing ordinary people. By January 2026, protests were spreading across major Iranian cities as citizens took to the streets over economic collapse, political repression, and growing anger at the government. The Iranian leadership blamed foreign interference, while the United States openly supported Iranian dissent and tightened sanctions against countries still trading with Tehran. The situation was already boiling over, and diplomacy between Iran, the United States, and Israel had basically collapsed. Then came the moment that changed everything. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated military assault against Iranian military bases and nuclear facilities in what was reportedly called Operation Epic Fury. The scale of the attack shocked the world. Waves of airstrikes targeted nuclear enrichment sites, missile bases, radar systems, and military infrastructure across Iran. U.S. naval forces in the region supported the operation with missile defense systems and long-range strike capabilities, while Israeli forces conducted precision attacks on strategic targets. The goal was clear: cripple Iran's nuclear program and weaken its military power before Iran could expand its capabilities further. But the strike had an even more dramatic consequence. During the assault, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was reportedly killed. If confirmed, this would be one of the most consequential political assassinations or wartime deaths in modern Middle Eastern history. Khamenei had ruled Iran for decades and was the central figure holding together the country's political and religious power structure. His sudden death created a massive leadership vacuum inside Iran. Different factions within the Iranian government and military are now scrambling for control, while the country is simultaneously fighting a war and dealing with internal unrest. In simple terms, the entire Iranian political system has been thrown into chaos. The war itself has escalated rapidly. Within days, Iran responded with waves of missile and drone attacks against Israeli targets and U.S. military bases across the Middle East. Air defense systems have been working overtime intercepting incoming strikes, but some missiles have still hit military installations and strategic sites. Oil facilities and shipping routes have also become targets, especially around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important energy choke points on Earth. Nearly a fifth of the world's oil passes through that narrow stretch of water, and even small disruptions there can send global oil prices skyrocketing. Within days of the conflict, energy markets were already reacting, and fears of a global economic shock began spreading. And of course, this entire situation has ignited a massive political firestorm inside the United States. Some lawmakers support the operation, arguing that destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities was necessary to prevent a future nuclear-armed Iran. Others are furious, questioning whether the president had the legal authority to launch such a massive military operation without full congressional approval. Legal scholars and politicians are now debating whether this action followed constitutional war powers or bypassed them entirely. Meanwhile, the American public is watching yet another major Middle Eastern war unfold and asking the same question many people have asked for decades: how the hell did we get here again? International reactions have been deeply divided. Some Western allies have cautiously supported the strikes, arguing that Iran's nuclear ambitions posed a serious threat. Others, including several European leaders, warned that the attack could ignite a much wider regional war. Countries like Russia and China have condemned the strikes and called for an immediate ceasefire, accusing Washington and Tel Aviv of destabilizing the region. Across the Middle East, governments are nervously preparing for possible escalation as militias aligned with Iran threaten retaliation against American and Israeli interests throughout the region. This is exactly the kind of situation that makes people start whispering about the possibility of a global war. When multiple major powers get pulled into the same conflict zone, things can escalate fast and sometimes in ways nobody planned. If Iranian allies across the region launch coordinated attacks, if global oil supplies collapse, or if other major powers decide to intervene diplomatically or militarily, the conflict could grow far beyond its current scale. Right now, the war is only days old, but it has already reshaped the geopolitical landscape overnight. And this is why so many analysts are warning that the world has entered one of the most dangerous periods in modern history. Multiple conflicts are already raging across the globe. Ukraine, Gaza, the Red Sea, tensions with China, and now a direct war between the United States, Israel, and Iran has exploded onto the stage. Whether this conflict burns out quickly or spirals into something far larger will depend on decisions made in the coming days and weeks. But one thing is certain: the temperature of global politics just shot up dramatically, and the entire world is watching to see what happens next. For now, the world sits in a strange position. Not at world war, but definitely not at peace either. It's a time of rising rivalries, military buildups, and shifting alliances. Whether those tensions cool down or explode into something far worse will depend on the decisions made by world leaders in the years ahead. Let's just hope the people holding the power keep their heads cool, because if history has taught us anything, it's that once global wars begin, stopping them is a hell of a lot harder than starting them.